Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Whole Lot Day Love Coffee Seminars.
Hello.
Hey, my name is Zach.
And I'm Alyssa, and today we are going over pulling the perfect shot and dialing in.
Yes, we're talking about dialing in and timing, hopefully making good shots that look like this.
That looks pretty good, Zach. I'm going to take a sip of that.
All right. Thanks for coming in, everyone. Just real quick today before we get into everything. Just quickly on the structure of what we're going to be doing today. So again, we're talking about dialing in, pulling shots, getting our gear together, getting everything on the same page and running smoothly. We're going to talk about equipment that you need for making espresso, making good shots, what to look and taste for when dialing in and trying to get your coffee set how you want it, how to actually physically do that process, obviously. And then we're going to talk about some like tips and tricks, and kind of like what to do after, like the next step to the whole like espresso journey after that.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know, I was so overwhelmed when I first started working here, and I came from a DeLonghi, and I was like, I'm not sure what I'm doing. And in the past 5 months, I have learned all of these techniques, and I'm just so grateful for the knowledge that the staff has provided to me, and I feel like I can finally share it again.
Yeah, I'm in the like same boat too. Like I was pretty much like a home coffee enthusiast, like not necessarily a newbie to coffee, but I wasn't like professionally trained or anything like that. So learning to brew on espresso machines was like new to me too. Quickly became like my favorite thing to do, and just like turns out playing with espresso machines is fun.
It is, it is.
So me and Alyssa both love just like playing around with machines and doing this. So we're really happy and excited to talk to you guys about it. So, to get into what we're doing. So what do we need to make espresso and make shots? Obviously, need an espresso machine, need coffee to brew and drink. We're going to be doing most of our shot pulling. I think all of our shot pulling today is probably going to be with our Whole Lot Day Love Crema Wave. Need a grinder to grind our coffee with. We have a few different grinders that we're using, the Varia, the Eureka Mignon. We've got the Eureka Atom 75 back here. Obviously, I like normal puck preparation stuff, like a tamper. We have a couple different scales that we're going to be using for our dosage and puck prep. I will ask everyone, if you don't have one on your coffee station already, to either, as we're getting through stream today or before the next time you make coffee, grab yourself a quarter or a nickel. I know it's tough times out there sometimes.
Zach, so it is
either a quarter
right
or
now.
a nickel. But there's a couple of other like different accessories and tools that we have on the table here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a WDT tool here. So this is going to help disperse your grounds. This is great for when it gets kind of clumpy. We have a RDT. This is going to be the spray bottle. So this is really great if it's staticky, and especially if you live in a drier climate. We have the dosing funnel, so this is going to help as well when you're using the distributor, and you can use this when you're grinding into it, so you create less of a mess as well.
Cool. What about this guy?
So this is a pressure-regulated tamper, and this is going to be about 25 to 30 pounds. So this is really great so that you don't have to manually press down each time. But we're going to go out over that a little bit more when we're using them and talk about how to kind of calibrate that in for yourself.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, to kind of jump into like our puck preparation stuff, like we're talking about dialing in, like what exactly do we mean like when we're saying that? Like what are we referring to with that?
Yeah, so we're going to be adjusting the settings on your equipment to get the ideal extraction. So this is going to have to do with grind size. This is going to have to do with the tamping pressure.
Yeah, so we got like three like main variables that we talk about. I'm going to pull them up on a quick visual here just so we can kind of get like a good reference point and really kind of drive this home as like the three main things that we're talking about today. So our main variables when we're talking about puck preparation is going to come into our tamping pressure, which is the amount of force that we're using when compacting coffee in our puck, in our portafilter basket. Our grind size, which we're going to adjust with the grind adjustment dial on our grinders that we're using to actually change the size of the ground coffee that we're using. And then our dosage is going to refer to the amount of coffee that we're putting into our portafilter basket. And we're kind of, there's a couple of other variables that do come into play with brewing, obviously. Like obviously you'll see things about temperature.
Right, and the flow control too.
yeah.
And we try to not worry about those right off the bat and while we're dialing in these main variables, because that can be a little bit overwhelming with all those different variables going on. So we try to focus on these main ones first.
Yeah, so we're trying to keep this more of like a hands-on and like the physical of just like kind of getting all the gear on the same page.
Right.
Like very much like a beginner, either like if you're new to espresso or maybe you've like made a huge upgrade to the level of gear that you're using. You maybe got a new grinder or a new machine that you're brewing with and trying to get everything on the same page. But yeah, so that being said, like temperature, we have our Profit Deck drive set to a 200 or 201. It's usually a good catch-all temperature for like brewing medium roast coffees and just any coffee in general with espresso. The flow control on our machine, we're gonna leave that and just use basically a stock flow setting for now. So
Let's
get into
get into
making good
this.
shots.
So Zach, what does a good shot look like?
I'm glad you phrased it like that because I feel like that's kind of a trick question, right? So a good shot, there are some visual cues to like what a good shot looks like, but ideally like a good shot tastes good, right? We're gonna talk about numbers and we're gonna like obviously look at brewing a couple different shots, but like I'm gonna throw it back to you with what does a good shot taste like?
That's a great question. So I would say a good shot tastes really balanced. So it's not going to taste sour. It's not going to taste bitter. It's going to be in a really great range for us.
Yeah, that balance is like the key word right off the bat. Like,
Yeah.
Like obviously like different coffees are gonna have different like underlying flavors or different notes to them that you'll see listed on the bag. Like not every coffee is gonna taste the same, but ideally every coffee we do get it into feeling balanced and to like the best that specific coffee can be.
Absolutely.
So you might see like different shot ratios being thrown around. And when we refer to shot ratios, we're basically talking about the amount of ground coffee that we're using, like the size of our puck basically, to how much espresso we're getting out when brewing through that puck. So for example, you'll see like the 1-to-1 or the ristretto, which is like a very short, short high extraction shot, or a 1-to-3 ratio being like a lungo or a long shot. Kind of like might give you a little bit easier to get like a more balanced flavor out of. What are we dealing with today though?
So today we're going to be talking about a normale, and this is going to be the most commonly used shot ratio. This is going to be what you're getting in cafes, and this is what we're going to be striving to get today.
Yeah, so it's like our 1-to-2 ratio. Basically, we're trying to get twice as much brewed espresso out as we are putting ground coffee into our portafilter. I like normales too because the math is really easy.
And me too.
So ideally to like get us in the realm of where a coffee is going to taste best, we know that most coffees are going to taste best when brewed around like 25 to 30 seconds in that 1-to-2 ratio range. So that's kind of like what we're shooting for and
Great
what
benchmarks,
kind of like what we're going to work towards before taking the next step with like any individual coffee. So
Absolutely. So what about the crema though, Zach?
oh, I'm glad you asked because a lot of people do. You'll see a lot of discussions about crema, like obviously like a good kind of like appealing like visual look to a
Creamy
shot.
looking,
You get those perfect shots on Instagram. With
I
the
know it.
flowing, and then you get the nice crema bubbling on top. Crema is it's a good it's an indicator that a shot is good, but I also want to make sure everyone is aware that like a lack of crema does not necessarily mean that a shot is bad.
Exactly.
It does definitely contribute to like the mouthfeel and the texture that you get in a shot. I personally like the kind of like frothiness that you feel with like a really foamy shot almost. But some coffees just do not produce as much crema as others. Like generally speaking, like light roast coffees are just naturally not going to have as much, produce as much crema as a darker roasted coffee. So again, it's obviously helpful for visuals when it comes down to latte art and stuff like that too. But just to reiterate, like that lack of crema does not necessarily mean that a shot is bad per se.
That's right, and I was so happy to hear that too, because there was definitely some confusion, especially with Instagram and TikTok and all of that world. So it was great to have some clarification and know that I was doing the right thing, even if there wasn't crema in there.
So let's like get into actually like our puck prep itself. So again, the first like kind of main variable of our puck preparation that we talked about was dosage. basically how much coffee we're putting into our basket, which is also going to help us determine how much coffee we're looking for coming out of our shot with that 1-to-2 ratio. Important thing to remember with dosage, like any individual basket that you might have provided with a machine, or if you get a aftermarket basket to go kind of like an upgrade to, it'll probably have a like suggested dosage to it. Like for example, this BIT Bob basket that we're using here is suggested for 18 grams.
Right.
But what we're gonna look at in a second is that that's kind of like more of a, again, like a suggestion than the absolute, like, you must have
it's not a strict
yes, if you
line
have
always.
17.9 grams or 21.1 or 18.1 grams in this basket, you're doing something wrong. No, it's, again, just kind of get us in the ballpark of where we want to be. So
Absolutely.
what can we kind of like look at a glance to see like if our dosage is correct in our basket?
Absolutely. So looking at these two baskets we have here, this is where the quarter trick is going to come in really handy too. So you'll be able to use this quarter trick on top of the basket itself. So I'm going to go ahead and actually test this out here.
Yeah, so what, like we had everyone grab their money and throw
Yes,
more money
you better
onto their
have your
coffee
money, I hope.
stations. Yeah. So how are we actually going to use that to help figure out our dosage?
So I'm going to go ahead and put the quarter in here, and I'm going to be sliding it around a little bit. You know, it's freely moving in there.
Okay.
And I'm going to test it by actually putting it into the group head area.
Okay.
So I'm going to see if there's an indentation present after I put it into the group head area and see what's going on.
Okay. So we got a quarter right in the center of our puck, and we're going to lock it in.
Okay, we're locked in, and really this is all we need to do. We're not brewing anything with the quarter in there.
Yeah, we don't need to be brewing through metals. We're doing this before brewing.
Yes, all right. So let's get back here so you guys can see what's going on. And I'm going to take the quarter out. I'm not seeing any indentation there. At all.
Okay.
So what does that tell us, Zach?
So that means that there's like a good amount of space between the top of our puck and the shower screen on the inside of our group head here. So adversely, let's try this other basket that I can already tell like at a glance it's probably a little bit over.
This looks a little
full.
but let's go ahead and do this for our people here. So it's sliding around okay. We're going to go ahead and put it into the machine now and see what's going on. Okay. Wow. It's even
it's
a little hard to get in there even.
Okay.
So let's see. Oh, it has been drowned in there.
Yeah. So now if we turn our puck and actually try to move, like our quarter's not moving around at all. It's actually pretty well buried, actually almost past the surface. If you have this much coffee in your portafilter, you're probably also seeing a little bit left behind on your shower screen in your group head. Obviously, a very plain sign that you have too much coffee. You don't want the coffee to be backing right up to it. But ideally, that nickel or quarters width of space between the top of our puck and the shower screen in our group head means that our dosage is good. If in either direction, either overdosed or underdosed, like which would we, ideally we have it perfect, but which of them would be better than the other to have?
So I would say underdosed is definitely better to have. You're really shoving some grounds up into that group head area, and that's not good for the machine either.
Yeah, like obviously you can do your back flushing, like do your normal maintenance, but if we can prevent doing that and just keep the machine cleaner in general, obviously that's more ideal.
And just add a little bit more as we go.
And if your shot is underdosed, like a good sign besides doing a test like this to test your dosage, like you might see a little bit of extra moisture, like a little bit of soupiness, like the machines, if your machine does have like a solenoid relief where it's basically sucking that extra water and pressure out and releasing it, like on an E61 machine, like the Profitec Drive does here. It can't get all that out if there's like a ton of extra headspace in your puck, so there might be a little bit of water, a little bit of soupiness, but we'd rather have that than grounds like clogging up our shower screen, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and I just want to go over these two cups that we have here too. So we've got our dark roast and then our light roast here. And I can go ahead and just kind of distribute these a little bit and look at the differences in what they create. Go ahead,
So
Zach.
the interesting thing about this, and I wanted to point out as well, is to remember that different coffees are going to take up different amounts of space in your portafilter. Excuse me, guys. So on the right here, or I guess y'all's left, is the Whole Lot to Love Guatemala. It's a single origin and it's a lighter roasted coffee. Lighter roasted coffees are generally going to be a little bit denser, going to be a little bit heavier, whereas a darker roasted coffee is going to be drier, a little bit more brittle. So it's actually the same weight of coffee in these two cups, but you can see that they're taking up different amounts of space in our cup here. So just an important note that, again, like your dosage on your basket is suggested and not necessarily a rule. So
awesome.
Just keep that in mind. Quarter test, nickel test is great. Remember, guys, if you have any questions, like throw them into the chat. We're going to get there soon. Just as they're coming in, throw some questions at us. We're going to do a little bit of a longer question and answer session at the end as well.
Yep.
But feel free to throw some questions in the chat. So our second main variable on our puck prep is damping. Why don't you talk to us a bit about tamping?
Yeah, absolutely. So our tamp pressure should be between 25 to 30 pounds of pressure. If you have a traditional style tamper, this is not going to be regulated. So there is a couple different things we can do to help you really make sure that you're consistent with that each time. So some of the things I do here, I'm going to go ahead and put this basket back in. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get some coffee here as well so we can practice tamping. Let's go ahead here. Okay.
Very nice.
Yes, we love this grinder. It's one of my favorites.
I love the new Adam W75.
It's
super fast.
Beautiful.
Super quiet. The weight-based grinding is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll hear people talking about like amounts of pressure to use when tamping. Like how much pressure do we use when tamping?
So when using the tamper, we want it to be between 25 to 30 pounds of pressure. That's going to be our pressure regulated. But it's really hard to tell sometimes when you have this traditional tamper.
Right. Yeah. Like I don't know what 25 or 30 pounds of pressure is just like by weight. I don't really know how to like quantify that when just like pushing down on something. Unless I'm like pushing onto a scale, I guess. But like, so what else can we do to make sure that we're giving it like a good amount of pressure when tamping?
Yeah, so when using the traditional tamper, I like to have my thumb and my pointer finger on either side of the portafilter. And when I'm pressing it down, I can actually feel when my fingers are hitting the edge of the basket. And so I know that each time I'm doing it, it's going to be the same amount of pressure as possible. And then I have my elbow here at a 90-degree angle, and then I can pull up. And so that's going to be the consistency that we want to look for each time to kind of, get rid of some of those variables. You can look into a different tamper, but this will work great for now.
Yeah, and that's like you said the word consistency, which is like ideally with our dosage and our tamping, like we're keeping as many things consistent as possible until we're ready to change them. So, for example, with our dosage, like we want to be able to weigh the amount of coffee that we're putting in. So we know that, again, we have like an 18-gram basket. We want to know that we're putting in 18 grams in every time. So using a scale, some people ask when like first getting into espresso brewing, like, do I really need a scale? Like, is it super necessary? Like, on one hand, like to make coffee, you really only need coffee and water.
Right.
But when we're getting into espresso, where little changes can make such a big difference, a scale is like pretty much
very
necessary.
Yeah, very helpful.
Because that consistency is key. Like you don't want to be able to get a good shot like once a week. I want a good shot like 50 times a week.
Absolutely.
I want to know that they're all coming out good. So having tools like a scale, while not fundamentally necessary to making coffee, is definitely, I'm going to say it's necessary to making espresso and like making sure everything is staying consistent.
Absolutely. And one other thing I wanted to touch on real quick is just tamping evenly. So like we were talking about here, we have this bottomless portafilter, so it is much easier to hold the bottomless portafilter straight. But if you have something like a double spouted portafilter, it can be a little bit harder. You can still set that on the edge and be as even as possible. Again, using the elbow trick is going to be good. Using your finger trick is going to be good. And then we have another solution too with a tamper station that you'll be able to actually set your portafilter into, and it's going to be able to hold it evenly, so you don't have to worry about that each time.
Yeah, and that trick that you were showing with using your finger and your thumb, kind of like on the edge between the basket and the tamper is like a really good habit to get into, because you can like use that, just like use your body, like use that tactile feedback to feel like around this whole kind of like edge where they're meeting each other, if this feels even all the way around, when I take this out, I'll probably see that everything is like an equidistant kind of distance from the edge of the basket the whole way around. So definitely like take a second to like check out your puck when you're done tamping. Blow off some of the extra grounds there, but ideally like what we're seeing is that we have like an equidistant, let me try to get a little better angle there. Okay, there we go.
Awesome.
Like we have a even distance all the way around, as you can see, like kind of between the edge and the top of our pucks. That looks pretty good.
Yeah, it looks really good. It's
Yeah.
almost a shame to not pull a shot with it.
Well, go ahead and run it. And I guess we're here to make coffee. Let's make some coffee.
This is true. This is true.
And looks like we had a couple questions pop up. So Andika is asking, when do we have to change your group head pressure? I would honestly say, like, don't worry about it yet, and just, you will be able to get into like manipulating your flow and your pressure a little bit, but most machines are gonna come set to a standard of somewhere around 9 to 10 bar of pressure. And that's really like the ideal pressure to be using with espresso. As you kind of get more into fine-tuning your dial-in, you might look more to adjusting the flow as compared to like pressure. I know it's kind of hard to like consider the difference. Yeah, you're more likely to manipulate flow of water than the pressure itself. Sergio is asking, what causes the bubbles on the surface of espresso, and is it good or bad to have bubbles? And actually, I'm glad that you pulled a shot here. Why don't we get that on our tamp mat so we can actually see what Sergio was asking about, because he's probably referring to the crema that we were just talking about. Yeah. So Sergio, if this is what you're referring to, where we have this kind of like light, kind of golden
Bubbly,
brown layer, that's what we were referring to when we're talking about crema. And then the body of our shot being obviously the darker coffee below that. So crema is really just the presence of carbon dioxide being in the coffee, and basically gases from the coffee
being released,
being released through the brewing under temperature and pressure, and collecting on the top of the coffee. So that's what we're going to refer to as crema. So again, like a good shot may or may not have crema. I do love the kind of like the mouthfeel and the texture that it gives you, but a good tasting shot may not always demonstrate that.
And that's right. So it's good to taste it even if it doesn't have the crema on there. You still want to taste it to see what's going on, because you don't want to just throw the shot away just because it doesn't have that crema. So make sure that you're tasting it to see how it feels in your mouth.
And one more question before we get into our grind size discussion. So someone is asking, I get different fresh coffee weekly, which sounds great. With my machine, which is a Breville Bambino Plus, is it normal to have to change your grind and grams dosed for each, I'm assuming for each new bag?
So it can be normal to change what's going on every time. So because of the different, even just the gases that are released, the way that it's roasted, all of those things are going to play a factor. We looked at the differences in just the light and dark roast, the amount of space that they take up. So that's totally normal.
Yeah, again, like a slightly darker coffee is just naturally going to be a little bit more brittle and not as dense as a lighter roasted or a more freshly roasted coffee. You know, again, these are the same weight of coffee in each of these glasses, but the volume that they're taking up is different. So you will have to adjust that. And even just as you get through a single bag of coffee, you know, as you get closer to the end of a bag, you know, the coffee might have off gas a little bit more, like might be a little bit drier or more brittle by the time you get to the end of it. So even just shot to shot, just through the same coffee, you might have to adjust. Good thing to, and I'm glad that you brought this up, because kind of people can get into a mindset that a dialing in thing is only something that needs to be done like as you're first getting a machine, but it's constant. Like I said, sometimes just from shot to shot. You know, it's obviously going to be more drastic, more of a hassle going to a completely new coffee. You know, going from a very dark to a super fresh light roast is going to be
grinder.
Like it's going to be more of a kind of labor of love to do that. But even just very small changes, or just, you know, as your coffee gets a little bit older, whatever it might be, like you do have to tune and dial in, I don't want to say constantly, but regularly.
Yeah,
at least.
absolutely. Just keep an eye on those variables and taste it and see what you need to change. Shouldn't be giant major adjustments each time, but just keeping an eye on what things you can kind of tinker with to get the best balanced shot.
Yep. If you have any questions that we didn't get to yet, feel free to throw them in. If we don't answer them before the end, we'll have a couple more minutes towards the end to kind of chat about more stuff. So we talked about our dosage, how to kind of figure that out and make sure that we're keeping that consistent with our scale. We talked about our tamping pressure, keeping that consistent, just making sure whether you're using the exact amount ends up being 10 pounds or 60 pounds of pressure, whichever it is, just making sure that we're doing that consistently each time. And then ideally, the last part of our puzzle that we're actually changing to get dialed in is our grind size.
That's right.
So a good thing to kind of know, or I guess get roughly where we want it to be, is getting our grind size in the espresso realm before we even start to brew a shot. Because if we're brewing with something that is just drastically outside of the espresso grind range, it can be hard to know how far you need to actually adjust your grinder to get to where it's going to...
Right, where do we even start?
Right, yeah. So there's some visual things that we can look for with our grind size to kind of get us on the right page to begin with. So what I have actually set up here is a couple of different grind size samples. So I know it's a little bit hard to tell. Actually, let me grab our quarter here. I'm going to put this in as kind of a scale thing. But I know on the phone a lot we use, what's the line that we use to kind of describe to customers the consistency or the grain size of their grinds that they're looking for?
Yeah, so somewhere between flour and table salt. I've also heard it, it kind of has the consistency or feel of wet dirt.
Okay.
So I know that sounds silly, but it really is a really great place of reference for us to be. So somewhere kind of right in this range here is where we want to be.
Yeah, so down here we got a grind size that's probably honestly coarse enough to be like a cold brew or like a filter coffee, and we get a little bit finer towards the side. Something that we can also do kind of tactilely with our hands to feel if we're in the right range is actually pinching our coffee and seeing if we're getting clumping. So we'll kind of know that we're in the right range because when you pinch your coffee together, if it is in the realm of espresso grind, it's actually going to make little clumps and stick together. Whereas if we were to go on this end to, like I said, probably something that we look at for a cold brew or maybe a pour over, if I'm pinching this, it's not clumping and it's still just flaking apart and just rolling off of itself basically. Whereas if we go down here, yeah, you're probably right. This is probably eyeballed right in our espresso range down on this end. I'm basically getting a tiny little cake or even kind of like a tiny little espresso puck by just pinching it with my fingers. So yeah, that kind of eyeballing it to between salt and flour, just stuff that you'll have in your kitchen, is a great way to know. Because I know the dialing in process in general can be a little bit frustrating.
Absolutely.
You can go through a lot of coffee.
How much
doing
coffee
it.
have you gone through, Zach?
There have been times where I've pulled 15 or 20 shots and just still finding yourself at least roughly where we want to be to begin with can prevent a lot of frustration. So just kind of eyeballing that and using that as a kind of starting off point, and then brewing some shots from there. That'll also make sure that if you do need to make a huge adjustment to your grind size, you might then need to go back and adjust your dosage afterwards and everything. So that kind of helps us from having to make so many other major changes after that as well. So we kind of talked about the three main things. Let's
do some stuff.
Yeah, let's make some shots and do some actual dialing
All right.
in. So you got the Eureka Mignon over there.
I do.
I'm gonna get dosed on my side with the Varia VS3 over here. Let's pull some shots and kind of see what we get.
Yeah,
see what we need
and please feel free, submit your questions in the chat. We'll reach back to those once we're done pulling these here.
Yep. So like we said, me and Alyssa are both using our respective scales to get our dosage figured out. I think the last time I pulled this coffee with this grinder, I needed about 16.5 grams. So you probably need some coffee over there too.
Yeah, I do. I need 18 grams. That's what we're doing here.
So again, we're using our Crema Wave coffee. It's just a pretty it's a good, I like to describe it as an everyday coffee.
Yes.
Nothing too crazy, like too out there. But definitely like a little bit more complex than just your like average, diner coffee. So I'm dosing to about 16.5 grams. The nice thing about Crema Wave and being able to drink it so often is that it's easier for us to dial in because we kind of know like what it's supposed to taste like.
You do get to kind of know the coffee after a while too, especially if you found a coffee that you really like. There is kind of this relationship you have with it, and you understand the consistency, and even you can tell when it starts like off-gassing more, and you need to change an adjustment a little bit. So it's really great. You can have fun with it.
Yeah, it's a good thought. But so on that note, if you're using a completely new coffee, again, you want to kind of make sure, like you said when we asked about like what a good shot tastes like, just making sure that it is balanced, making sure it doesn't taste too bitter or too sour. I know kind of knowing the difference between the two is something that I kind of had to learn when I try to just get more into like actually describing the coffee that I was talking about. It can be kind of hard to articulate like what is the difference between a sour and a bitter shot.
Right.
I like to remember that a sour shot is going to kind of make you do like that kind of like sucking face when it's like when you get like the really sour candy.
Yeah, lemon.
I kind of like use an alliteration like sour gives you sucky face and a bitter shot tastes burnt. So that sourness you're usually going to taste like on the sides of your tongue, and the bitterness you're going to usually feel like in the very back of your tongue.
Yep.
And a good thing to note about bitterness too is that it will also feel, bitter shot's gonna feel like kind of ashy. It'll almost give you like that kind of like dryness in your mouth.
Yeah, it's definitely a feeling that you'll know it right away.
Yeah, so just taking a minute to like not only like taste what your coffee tastes like taste the flavor, but also like take a moment to see like where you are feeling it is a good habit to get into, and trying to like really like know which way to adjust when trying to get something dialed in. So I got my shot prepped here. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this one here. So again, I dosed 16.5 grams in, which I weighed out on our scale. And then I'm gonna put my scale on our machine. And I'm going to be looking for twice that out. So easy math, 16.5 times 2. I'm looking for about 35 grams out, right? So ideally, I'm gonna get that in about 25 to 30 seconds on our machine.
Ideally.
Luckily, yes. Luckily, our fancy Profitec drive has a shot timer right on the PID display. If you have a scale that has a shot timer on it, that's great. You might just need to get like a kitchen timer, use a timer on your phone or whatever. But having something to like quantify and actually track how long your shot is taking is important when we're basically like doing like science experiments.
Yeah, it really does, and that's why we do come back to the scale. It is, I would say, quite essential.
Yeah, so I'm looking for about 35 grams out. I can tell already.
That looks pretty fast to me.
Yeah. So there's my 35 grams. I actually ran over a bit, and that was only about 10 seconds. So I definitely gotta adjust here. So if I need to make my shot, it pulled fast.
Yes.
I want my shot to slow down. What am I gonna do to my grind size to achieve that?
Yeah, so we're definitely gonna have to go finer.
Okay.
It's going so quickly, there's not enough resistance from those grounds to actually help with the extraction. It's just going through so quickly and actually going to be under extracting the coffee.
Right, yeah, so I'm gonna, you know what, for science, I'm gonna try it.
Oh boy.
Definitely watery. Definitely not like a full-bodied shot at all.
And where are you tasting it in your mouth?
Honestly, kind of all over the place, which is not necessarily a good sign either.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, not getting that like nice like center of the tongue like umami feel, but yeah, it's more than anything like it's watery. It's just like not strong. This is like the kind of like consistency I'd expect out of like a drip or a pour over coffee. So yeah, this one was not great. I'm gonna fine up my grind size a little bit.
I think you need to, and I think I should try to go ahead and see if I can do any better.
Get my puck knocked out there for you. Sorry, holding the hot end towards you. That was not great bar etiquette. My bad. So yeah, good thing to note. try your shots.
Definitely.
You know, we're looking at numbers, you know, we're looking at our shot mirror. We got our nice bottomless portafilter so we can kind of see how our shot is coming out. We'll kind of touch on that in a minute as well. I try all of your shots, unless you're only getting like a couple drips of coffee out because your grind size is clogging your machine. I would urge you to try just about anything. Because again, we're looking for things to happen within that 25 to 30 seconds, but some coffees just might fall outside of that. You might stumble into a new way to brew your coffee that is just the best thing that you've ever tasted. And you know, sometimes we've had people pull some coffees that taste great in like 17, 18 seconds, depending on the type of coffee and how we're brewing it. So try everything. We're gonna kind of harp on this again towards the end, but what we're doing to dial in today is not the end-all be-all for extractions in espresso brewing. We're using this as kind of a starting off point, like a benchmark to get us in the range of where we expect things to be good. But we're gonna adjust after this to really get a coffee like exactly where we want it.
Uh-oh, Zach. What's going on here?
You're having the opposite problem. Looks like we're getting some tarry drips.
Wow,
really
kind of
thick-
looks like sludge a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think we need to do?
So yeah, same opposite on this. You know, our grind size is too slow, almost clogging. We're getting a little bit better flow now. We're still missing on our grouping on our bottomless portafilter a little bit. Yeah, I would definitely going to suggest that you get a little bit coarser grind size here.
Now, before I learned what I did here, working here, I would have thought that that was a good shot. Even though it was so slow in the beginning, it starts to come out faster. But now I've learned that, you know, because it was so slow in the beginning, it's really under extracting.
That's a good thought. Yeah, we will kind of get more into like the really fine nuances of extraction and kind of like coffee science on the next like dialing in. We're gonna do like a more in-depth dialing in. We also have a couple things scheduled for like tasting and like again like those nuances and flavor and stuff like that.
Should I be doing this for science as well?
I hear that's all you. That's your shot. That's your responsibility.
Yes. Not good.
Not good. That your professional opinion
This
on
is
that
my
one?
professional opinion, and that was not good.
Okay. How's it tasting or how's it feeling to you?
It's tasting very bitter. I'm feeling
Okay.
it in the back of my mouth here.
Are you getting that like ashiness?
Definitely getting the ashiness. It almost feels, it just makes my mouth feel really dry.
Yeah.
And so I know that we need to go coarser.
You kind of get that like,
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it really does.
I know I'm drinking something, but I'm more thirsty after drinking this kind of thing.
Exactly.
That's a good indicator that your shot is probably too bitter and possibly over extracted.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get another couple shots figured out here. But so again, I just want to reiterate, and I'm going to sound like a broken record on this, but it's going to take a handful, if not dozens of shots to like really get a coffee figured out and get it dialed in, especially when you're first getting either a new grinder or a new machine or both. Maybe you're not used to brewing darker or lighter coffees. An unfortunate reality of it is that you are going to go through a good deal of coffee
Definitely.
sometimes. You're going to taste some bad shots sometimes. I would still urge you to try them again in the name of science. But yeah, it can be frustrating. It can take some time. Like you might eat up the better part of an afternoon.
I did go through a whole bag of the creme
Sure,
wave when
yeah.
I was dialing and learning how to dial in.
You definitely get faster and kind of get quicker with it, especially as you get more comfortable like with your specific setup. Like I
Yes.
might know like, okay, to make so much of a difference in my shot time, I only need to change this grinder like a quarter of a digit, whereas on a grinder like this, I might need to change it like a whole digit,
Yep.
something like that. It does take practice. It takes time. Like it's going to be a little bit frustrating. Having the right tools to help keep you consistent does go a long way. We're gonna touch on like some of the extra like upgraded accessories that we
Yeah.
talked about and how they kind of like smooth out the whole process. For example, personally love the Atom W75 or the Eureka Libra being weight-based grinders.
They take a whole step out of the workflow, so you're really just, you know what you're getting. You don't necessarily have to have the scale beforehand, so it's just giving you exactly what you need. Now, that being said, this scale is still good to have while you're weighing the shot that's coming out.
Yeah. If you do, like, for some reason end up with a weight-based grinder but not a scale to weigh your shots coming out, I would still suggest, like, setting yourself a benchmark. Like, usually a shot of espresso is usually going to be anywhere from, like, 2 to 2.5 ounces, especially depending on how much crema is coming out. So if you're not weighing your weight coming out, I would still, like, maybe measure in, like, a measuring glass, like 2.5 ounces of water.
Volume of your liquid.
Maybe even, like, make a mark on your shot brewing cup, like your dialing in cup, and just get to that same volume every time at least if you're not able to measure the weight going out. But at the end of the day, things like a scale is going to be more or less essential to making sure that you're able to dial in properly. So again, we're gonna do some more like questions. If you guys are having any issues with your dial-in that you want to help us get cleared up, like we're gonna get to those in a moment. We're actually running like a little bit quick.
Yes.
So we're gonna have a few minutes to answer some individual questions, which will be nice. Actually, let's get to one right now. So the Battle Noob is asking, I use a puck screen which changes the pull time by a ton. Should I dial in with the puck screen or without?
That's a good question.
I'm like, it might seem kind of obvious, but you want to do it with that. What I'm beginning to, and we'll continue to harp on continually, is do it until it tastes good.
Consistency.
If doing shot prep with or shot pull with your puck screen does significantly change your shot time, at least see how it tastes and adjust from there. We'll give you some like tips and reference material to kind of dial in by taste, like kind of the next steps after this, like getting our 1-to-2 ratio in 30 seconds, like what to do afterwards. Just whichever one you're doing, just do it every time. So go ahead and continue to do it with your puck screen, like dial in with that and just make adjustments until it tastes good.
Right, because if you're taking it out and then making an adjustment and then putting it back in, we're just adding another variable in there.
Right, yep. So yeah, again with the consistency, whichever, whether you're using a puck screen or not, do that thing the same every time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Cool J said, how many shots should you pull before cleaning a machine?
It really depends how messy your pucks are. Like, are you overdosing and having your puck backing right up to your shower screen? It's definitely a good idea to get into the habit of back flushing. Like, I would even say like every weekend if you can, doing back flushing, at least with water. If not, like a back flushing detergent like Cafiza or Coffee Clean. I don't know if there's a way to make your machine like too clean, so I wouldn't worry about overdoing it. But honestly, if you have the time, Cool J, to do it like every weekend, I would do a back flushing every weekend. Then obviously like just generally keep your machine cleaned up, keep the outer parts dry, don't let stuff build up in your drip tray and stuff like that. Cool J is also asking or commenting, I find too many aficionados to be against adding sugar I don't know if you're talking about milk drinks or espresso specifically, or what is your what's your take on sugar and espresso?
So personally, I really like sugar. Okay, so I am a pumpkin spice kind of girly, and I do like having sweet drinks. But when I'm drinking just espresso, I do like to taste just the espresso if I'm not having a latte. So I think, the reason that people don't always like to add sugar to everything is because they do want to actually taste the flavors of the coffee. Sure. So I'm going to let you speak a little bit more on that because I am a pumpkin spice girl.
I personally like drinking just either shots usually, or if I do make a milk drink, it's usually going to be a cortado, which is a very, very short milk drink, basically 1-to-1 of coffee and milk. My reaction to this, Cool J, is I don't think you should care about aficionados or coffee professionals or whatever.
Definitely.
Make the coffee that you want to make. I don't care if you're adding a pound of sugar for a single shot of espresso. If you're making shots that you like with your gear that you bought, and you're happy with your time with your hobby and making coffee at home, like, dude, I don't care what everyone else is saying. I'm gonna be harsh. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah.
Drink the coffee that you like, regardless of what people are doing, or telling you to do. So, so we pulled a shot earlier with the W75 that was like pretty close. Let's pull one again real quick, like see where it's at, and maybe see if there isn't like a finer adjustment that we can do to it. While I'm getting another shot prepped, so let's go back to some of the kind of like accessories, like non-essentials, if you will, that we offer that you might see like people using in their espresso stations, and like what exactly they're doing or achieving by using these things.
Yeah, so I can go over some of these here. So again, this is going to be the WDT tool. So this is really going to help distribute and keep the even extraction that you want. So again, for the clumping, this is really going to help with that. So this is really great to use.
Yeah, important thing to know on a WDT tool is that one of the things specifically that's trying to combat, or I guess not necessarily combat, but kind of maintain, is the distribution of fines within your puck. As we get more into like the coffee like nuances and kind of science and stuff, you'll learn that not all coffee grinds are created equally. Even though ideally an espresso grinder is putting out every single grind is exactly the same size, it doesn't actually turn out to be that. So we have basically a variation in our grind size where the very, very small parts of that grind size are referred to as fines, the larger parts being referred to as boulders. But what a WDT tool is doing ideally is making sure that those fines and boulders are evenly distributed within our basket before tamping. It's going to help kind of combat channeling, stuff like that. But good thing to know as I'm getting into my puck prep here. So sorry to interrupt you, Alyssa. Carry on as I grab another one of your tools before you can use it.
So this is really great too for single dosing. So again, we went over this a little bit. So if you're in really dry areas, there can be more static. So you can go ahead and spray that into the actual cup here when you have your beans, and then shake it up, and that's going to get rid of some of that static as well.
What might someone see to like, how do I know if I'm having static happening with my grinder? I think this is something that we experience more regularly with us. It's more of a concern for single dose grinders.
Right.
But like with a single dose grinder, like the Oro or the VS3 here, like what is someone actually going to see to let them know that they're getting a staticky grind environment?
Yeah, so it can actually you're going to see it kind of disperse. It's really going to get kind of even stuck on the machine around it. You're just going to see that it's not evenly going into the basket. It's kind of catching on other areas around it.
Yeah, so and actually the VS3 specifically is kind of an easy grinder to notice this on, and I actually kind of, now that I'm seeing how much I lost,
black too, yeah.
I wish that I had sprayed my beans a little bit beforehand. So you can see that I kind of have some grinds that are stuck to the output chute. Is basically instead of going down into the cup, the static is actually causing them to fly back and stick to the grinder itself, as opposed to going back into my grind dosage. So limiting that is not only going to keep our coffee station clean, but make sure that we're getting all of the intended coffee in our coffee.
What do you think? How many grams do you think you lost?
Probably only a gram there, but I don't want it to be any, because again, I want all the coffee that I weighed in to know that it's in there, so I know exactly the dosage that I have. Like as little retention or loss in our grinds as possible is ideal.
Yeah.
So let's run a shot here with our grind that we have set up in our W75. If anyone has any more specific questions about their puck prep, accessories, dialing in, comments on their weird favorite coffees that you've tried recently, throw them in. This is actually looking pretty nice so far.
This looks pretty good. This is one that I actually want to try.
Okay. Yeah, we'll if we got a decent one, we'll share this one. I know we both had probably some pretty. Mine was not enjoyable.
Mine, I can kind of still taste mine in my mouth a little bit.
And that's actually a good thing. Why don't we actually address that then? I think we have our soda water dispenser back there. Why don't you grab a cup for me and you as like a palate cleanser? Having a good bubbly, ideally something unflavored as a palate cleanser in between espresso tastings is good, just kind of like a palate cleanser like you would have for a wine tasting or something like that. Ideally something unflavored, you know, just plain soda water, seltzer
Cheers.
water. But just as a palate cleanser, it's nice just to get any like unpleasant flavors out and kind of reset you before trying something else. If you want to dose me out some of our shot here, it pulled a little
Absolutely.
bit slow. We got about 37 grams and it was about 35, 36 seconds, but let's see. I'm sorry, it's 31 seconds. Okay, so we're slightly long, but only a tiny bit. All right, real cheers this time
Real
because we're tasting
cheers.
something good. So we got our crema wave. Still pretty hot.
No.
That crema wave nuttiness. Again,
Yeah.
it's nice knowing
Yeah.
what the coffee should taste
Absolutely.
like. We're definitely in the realm of where we want to be. I generally prefer coffees like on the sweeter end anyway, so I think I would want to like shorten up this shot time a bit.
Turn it into more of a ristretto like we talked about before and get
Yeah.
some of those sweeter notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm feeling it balanced though. So I'm tasting it in the middle of my tongue. I'm not tasting it in the back. I'm not tasting it in the sides. It's really kind of a balanced flavor now.
So this coffee in general is, again, it's a little bit towards the darker side. You know, it's not a middle of the road medium coffee, so it's always going to have like more of those darker, like again, like those notes of nuttiness and chocolatey to it. It does have some of the like sweeter stuff. There's like a note of like honey in there too that you get. So on our grinder here, I'm gonna coarsen this up by just the tiniest bit. And a good thing to note when adjusting grind size on your grinder, unless, even if you are using a single dosing grinder even, have your grinder running as you are making adjustments to your grind size.
Yes.
It's gonna do two things. It's going to, most importantly, prevent jams to your grinder, especially if you're going to a finer grind setting where we're basically squeezing our burrs closer together. If there's any residual coffee beans in there that haven't been crushed or ground yet, moving those burrs closer together when it's not actually moving can actually cause it to lock up and jam, so the next time you go to grind, you're not going to get anything at all. Adjusting the grinder as it's running is also going to get any residual coffee of the previous grind setting out to make sure that you're not like confusing it. So as this is dosing, I'm going very slightly to the coarser side on this, just about a half a digit on the W75 here. So because again, this was grinding as I was making the adjustment, I'm actually gonna dump this.
This is what we were talking about, going through some coffee here.
Yeah.
So we call them sacrificial grinds.
Yes.
So it's in the name of having a good shot
Yes,
at the end.
there's a price for perfection,
There is.
unfortunately. So let's get this ground out here again. So looks like someone had a question in regards to, I think it was Cool J's question about the puck screen, or one of the other members, viewers' question about the puck screen. Do you recommend puck screens?
So I do recommend using a puck screen. It can help with the dispersion of water. It can also help keep your actual shower screen cleaner as well. So there are definitely benefits to it.
It is one, to me, the only downside to it is that it's one other thing to keep clean.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm done with my coffee, I just want to enjoy my coffee and not worry about anything else. But yeah, there's definitely benefits to having a puck screen. It's, again, one of those things that's not super necessary.
And it's not necessary, yeah.
But it is nice to have around. If you got it in the budget, maybe Santa throws one in your stocking or whatever, it's not a bad thing to have around.
But get a scale first.
Yes.
Necessities. There's
Yes.
like tiers to what would be the most useful in dialing in before the puck screen.
Yeah.
So I would say that's more towards the end of like, I've gotten into this as a hobby. I really want to try out some other things to make the ideal extraction.
Yeah. It looks like Saeed, I believe, is how you're going to pronounce that. It says, my ECM bottomless portafilter doesn't stay still on the scale. Do you have a scale with a stepped surface so a portafilter can rest on it? Good thought, Saeed.
Yeah.
A good thing to bring up as I'm going to run our second shot here. Some scales will come with like a rubber mat. I know a lot of the Acaia scales come with basically an angled piece. I'll see if I can grab one here real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
But basically just something to hold up the back edge of your portafilter and keep it off the counter is good to have around. You might find like a weighing plate. Again, I know Acaia has a weighing plate. I actually found one here from Eureka. which is going to kind of solve that problem. How did our shot turn out?
It
How did we
turned
look?
out pretty good, I would say. We got, I think it was 28 seconds, 29 seconds,
Okay.
and we're at 37, so I stopped it a little bit late. But this looks good to me.
Okay. Well, it looks good. Again, we're going to taste it to make sure it tastes good.
We are going to make sure it tastes good.
We don't want to get too stuck on the numbers and how the shot looks. Like at the end of the day, make sure your coffee is tasting good to you, because we don't look at shots. We don't take pictures of them all day. You bought a coffee machine to drink coffee.
Right.
So nice. Let's try this. See how this compares to the last one.
A little hot that time.
Still a little hot. And a good thing to note again, I forgot to mention, complete my thought on that earlier, so
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned it again. Letting your espresso cool down a little bit is going to help you actually taste the flavors. As your coffee is hotter, it's just a matter of chemistry, I guess physics specifically. Hotter things are going to be harder to taste. It's going to taste different as it cools down. So usually letting your espresso shot cool down anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds is going to be a little bit easier to actually taste the flavors in it. And also coffees are going to change drastically as they cool down. If you let a coffee cool down to even down to room temperature, you are going to taste drastically different notes in that. I feel like a lot of times you're more liable to pull out the fruitier and sweeter, kind of high-end notes of a shot after it cools down. So it's an important thing to make sure that you're not always sipping your shot right after it comes out of the machine. So sorry, to finish answering your question, Saeed, something that you can also do is get a tamping station like we kind of demonstrated here with our shot earlier. Tamping station can also help keep a bottomless portafilter off of your countertop. It's basically, and you can fit this on a smaller scale. I was able to find a weighing plate from Eureka as well. So we have a couple different options for keeping your bottomless portafilter off of your counter. And I believe Saeed's issue that they are running into is probably that the scale itself is too small and it's either flopping off
Or the grounds could spill out.
Yeah, or
definitely.
the handle of the portafilter only has space to rest on the counter, which obviously is not going to give us an accurate weight. So yeah, a weighing plate or a tamping station, something similar to one of these is going to help solve that problem.
Absolutely.
Andrew is saying that I've been trying to keep every shot similar, same weight, same grind size, same tamp, but I keep getting fluctuated timings. Sometimes it's 24 seconds, sometimes it's 34 seconds. Frowny face indeed.
Yes.
Sorry to hear that, Andrew. You might have some other suggestions, Andrew, on this, but my first thing on this is to make sure that you are being careful with your puck, excuse me, after you have it prepped. Basically, you're taking the time to weigh out your dosage. You're doing a nice even tamp. You might even be using a calibrated tamper to make sure that you're having a consistent tamping pressure every time. But if you're getting your nice tamped and prepared puck, actually I'll steal one of these that we had earlier, and you're kind of putting it into your machine like this and not really sure exactly where you're going with it. So what I did is I had this nice prepared, evenly distributed, perfect puck, and then I knocked the whole thing around. And if I don't put it into the machine smoothly, I'm basically knocking the puck loose from the sides. Yeah, I could
change a lot of things.
Could be getting a lot of channeling coming through the sides of the puck because I basically have pulled it out of there. So be careful to just you'll get used to getting your portafilter lined up and in your machine with your eyes closed eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, try to be careful with it. Take care of it. Be nice to your coffee. It'll be nice to you.
Yeah, and then the other thing I was thinking too, just depending on what type of machine you have, some espresso machines have PID and they're going to be able to stay in a better temperature range.
Okay.
You know, you're going to be able to set it exactly where you want it to be. Other machines are going to have some temperature fluctuation, and that could change a lot of different things.
Yeah, and if you're using a machine where you're intentionally doing what we'll refer to as temperature surfing, which I think actually is something that might be talked about tomorrow.
Ooh.
If you're doing temperature surfing and stuff like that, I would try to like back off from that and just leave your machine at whatever temperature it's set to. It's probably made to brew at a good temperature to begin with. So I would kind of like make sure you're good without manipulating temperature at first if you are, and then start exploring that. Real quick, before we get wrapped up, there's one other kind of visual thing that I want to bring up to everyone. Is kind of like, where do we go from here? If you're like Andrew and you're able to, you have a good dosage and puck prepping and tamping routine, you're able to get your consistent shots so they're pulling, you're getting it to 27 seconds every time, but you're still not happy with the coffee, or it's still like not coming out great. Again, this is a benchmark or like a starting off point. Like some coffees might fall wildly outside of this.
Absolutely.
Like I said, like I've had great shots that have pulled like closer to 20 seconds and like a weird ratio kind of between that 1 to 2 or 1 to 1. This is getting us in the ballpark of where we want to be. But to hit a home run, you're gonna need to adjust to taste.
Yes.
I'm gonna actually, if one of our producers could pull up our espresso compass graphic.
This beautiful graph here.
Yeah, so you'll probably be able to find similar visuals to this by just searching for espresso compass online. But this is kind of like a good visual guide to how to like adjust your brew and adjust your extraction to taste. So if pulling exactly in 27 seconds and you're exactly at 36 grams with an 18 gram dosage, your shot is still coming out bitter, being on kind of like the red end of this. What this is basically showing us is to back off on bitterness and move towards a more balanced flavor. We want to go towards the left on this, which is to decrease our yield, basically running a slightly shorter shot. Adversely, if your shot is coming out to be like very salty or sour, we're going to want to like increase our yield. So you'll find this is kind of a simplified version of the espresso compass. Like I said, you'll probably find a couple different iterations of this on a quick Google search. But this is basically like how to adjust your either ratio or grind size according to what you're actually tasting in your cup. It's also going to kind of be like a good way to give you like kind of like hints or keywords to like articulate what you're tasting in your coffee too. Like I mentioned earlier, like it was really hard for me to kind of like get into a habit of like, how do I actually describe this coffee?
Absolutely, yeah. And then learning about where it feels in your mouth and what it actually tastes like and what's going on. Having the verbiage and everything, and you're always available to. We're always available to answer questions as well by phone. One of the things that's really great about Whole Latte Love is we do have the phones available 6 days a week to answer questions. So please feel free to call and ask any questions.
Or use our chat function. Like if you call either our sales or our order support line, you're liable to talk to myself or Alyssa, a number of other Zacks. We love talking about this stuff. So like send us a chat or an email, give us a call sometime, schedule a coffee cast for a one-on-one video call. So that being said, in addition to the espresso compass that we just talked about, kind of the next step is like adjusting to flavor and more nuanced and more specific dialing in tasks. So we have a couple of other live streams scheduled that are going to touch on this in more detail. Tomorrow specifically, I think our topic is Gaja Classic hacks.
Yes, we're doing some Gaja Classic
I'm actually excited to watch that one.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, learn some like neat ways to use your Gaja Classic, like one of the most popular machines.
It's a timeless machine, I'll tell you what.
But yeah, I'm actually genuinely excited to see what we talk about with that and learn some like hints for that one. But yeah, I super appreciate everyone coming out today. Again, we love talking about this stuff. I'm glad you could all come and talk with us. So this time tomorrow, Gaja Classic hacks.
That's right. And I'm Alyssa with Whole Latte Love.
I am Zach. Thank you so much for coming, everybody.
Take care.